Hello everyone, Matrix here from the Grim Reapers, and welcome back. A short while ago you may remember that I did a review of Winwing's Airbus 320, EFIS control panel and flight control unit. Now they've sent me the Boeing 737 NG equivalent, the mode control panel and the control and display unit, and you can see those two pieces of equipment pictured in the introduction here. So the first thing I'm going to do is look at Winwing's SimApp Pro software and how it relates to the Boeing 737 control and display unit and mode control panel. Here you can see I've got the control and display unit pictured, and I'm going to test it now. You can see that the software responds to all the inputs from buttons, and that demonstrates that it's operating correctly. You can turn various lights on as well. I just toggle the call button there, and you can try the LCDs as well. There you go. In this piece of software you can also select which position you want the control and display unit in, either the captain, first officer, or there's another position, I think it's the trainer. So looking at the mode control panel now, again likewise we're just testing that. I haven't pictured it here, but you'll see it responds to the usual inputs as well. One of the things about the version of the mode control panel that I've got is that the auto throttle switch is one of the magnetic latch types. Two versions of the mode control panel. The first is one with a plain toggle switch, and the one that I've got has the magnetically latching auto throttle switch. Now we're looking at the control and display unit. One thing I will show here is changing the font, because the original supplied font isn't particularly good, and I'm using the PMDG 737 aircraft module for Flight Simulator 2020 here, and they provide more suitable fonts for use in the McDo. So you can see I've installed this, and I'm switching to the font now. That actually makes a slightly better display. Now let's have a look at Winwing's Boeing 737 mode control panel itself. And here it is. As usual with Winwing, the quality is nice, and it's a 1:1 scale model. Looking at the reverse, you can see it has two USB ports, one for data and one for power if you need it. Another nice feature is these two little cable tidies next to them. Over here you can see the back of the magnetically latching auto throttle switch, and you can see it's mounted by screws, and you can change them if necessary. You can also see the robust side mounts, and this is set up for a desk mount which I'll be using for this review. There are also options for mounting on home simulators. All the switches are in accordance with the Boeing philosophy of having nice chunky switches, and there's the auto throttle. It's not powered at the moment, so it won't latch in this condition. Yeah, the buttons all have a nice positive feel, as do the rotary knobs. All in all, a nice piece of equipment and well up to Winwing's usual quality standards. Let's set that aside for the moment, and now let's have a look at the control and display unit. Again, very similar to the Airbus version. This has the full alphanumeric keyboard and the function switches, display and the line select switches at the top. Again, the robust mounting options for Winwing, including in this case the very reliable and solid desk clamp. On the back again, two USB-C ports for power and data. You'll notice that there are one or two screws missing. This is a pre-production model. Now let's get this mounted on my desk, and we'll proceed to the review demonstration flight proper. Okay, so here I'm going to demonstrate the McDo in use with PMDG's Boeing 737 NG model for Flight Simulator 2020. As yet I don't think they have a version for Flight Sim 2024, but I'm sure it won't be too long. In addition, this is about the only model that the McDo works with at the moment. So let's get the IRS aligned. Departing from Heathrow, gate 329, punch in the details, and then you could start the alignment. You'll notice that the brightness switch works either on the McDo, the CDU itself, or on the virtual version in the simulator. Okay, so the route will punch in Heathrow. It's already pre-supplied the departure airfield. We'll make that the origin, and we'll make Gatwick the destination. Fill in the other details like the runway and a call sign, or flight number in this case, and the runway will be 27 right. Note the flight plan request. I'm sure if you have the full PMDG model, that might be active, but in this case it's not. So runway 27. So runway 27 right going in. Okay, perfect. And this is where my very old knowledge of the 737 starts to cause trouble. I think 78.0 tons is a reasonable gross weight. Let's put in the cruise altitude to Gatwick, 6,000 feet, or flight level 60. And let's put in a cruise wind, in this case, of 28013. Top of climb OAT, that's pretty reasonable, but I might add a different temperature here just for the demonstration. Okay, flight plan fuel makes 6.0 tons, makes a zero fuel weight of 52.9, and the reserves 2.3, maybe a little on the low side for Gatwick, but should be okay for a return back to Heathrow if necessary. Cost index 33. Now let's go to N1 limit. Engines on the 737NG look like they have fixed D rates if you want to use them. From Heathrow, you'd probably be able to use D rate 2 and climb 2, but in this case, I think we'll settle for D rate 1 and climb 1. So they're selected, it should now be active. Over to the takeoff page, I think we're going to use flap 5 if my memory serves me correctly. We could probably use flap 1 at Heathrow with a nice long runway. Something to bear in mind about the 737-900 is it's very long, a short undercarriage, you can easily have a tail strike. Okay, so that's takeoff ref. What we need to do now is put in the V1, VR and V2. It's quite a split between the two, and I've opted to add a couple of knots to each of these. If you just line select against the dashes, it'll put in the QRH values. So back to init ref, that seems to be complete. Index, let's have a look at some of these. Legs, nothing in the flight plan yet. So I think what we'll do is we'll put in something fairly basic. Let's take, say, Lambourne. It's a beacon fairly close to London. Lambourne VOR. You can see the track now appears on the nav display. Timber, that's an arrival point for Gatwick. That's fairly basic, should do for the now. So let's activate that and press execute. That's a difference from the Airbus philosophy. So let's put in the departure from Heathrow. So let's scroll down and find something sensible. So Mayfield sounds good. Mayfield to Golf from 27 left. Now let's go back to departures. Check the route. No, it hasn't changed. Legs. No, that hasn't changed either. We need to activate the departure and arrival first. So arrival at Gatwick. Again, let's find something sensible. A Midhurst arrival would be good. And let's set it up for 26 left. Transition should be by Willow, but I haven't put it in here, so we'll just check the legs first. Lambourne to Timber as previously. We can scroll through the pages. So you can see the arrival to Timber. I haven't put the transition in yet. I'm not sure if I will for this demonstration. We'll see. Delete a few waypoints which are going to extend the route unnecessarily. You can see Timber on the arrival. So what we'll do is we will line select OSDEB. That brings Timber back up. And we haven't put the transition in, so we'll probably go straight to CF26 left. There you go, that's a route. Now we need to execute it. And you can see the line on the nav display becomes purple. Tells us we haven't got enough space to get to cruise and reduce speed to 220 knots via OSDEB. There's a whole page, progress page, N1 limit we've already done, and fixed page if you need to use it. So that's a quick look at how you program for takeoff on the Boeing 737 CDU. Apologies if I've made any mistakes. Like I said, it's been about 3 decades since I flew the 737, and I haven't actually flown the NG version. Let's have a look at the mode control panel in flight. We've set up a short flight to Gatwick, but then now I've done another one more appropriate. And you'll see that we're starting on the climb out from Heathrow. You remember I said that the aircraft had a long body and short undercarriage and had a tail strike? Well, I wasn't used to it. As I took off, yes, sure enough, I had a tail strike. Anyway, that's not really necessary for the purposes of demonstration, and we'll start in the climb out. You can see that I've engaged autopilot channel A, and we've now gone to LNAV, and we're in level change at 219 knots. Auto thrust is engaged. You'll notice that it hasn't latched the auto throttle on the hardware. I suspect that's down to a fault with the simulator and the interface with the hardware. So I've now selected VNAV mode, and the aircraft is climbing to 5,000 feet in VNAV and LNAV mode, and N1 mode is selected on the engine for the climb. You can see the route on the first officer's nav display. We'll modify that as we go. You can see that the mode control panel in the flight simulator responds accurately to inputs in the hardware mode control panel. So the aircraft's rolling out there, another 2,000 feet to go. What we'll do is eventually we'll set up for an ILS at Gatwick on 08 right. So, looking down, we can see the nav receivers. I'll tune these now for the Gatwick ILS frequency, 110.9. That's it, set them as active. That should allow us to fly an Autoland ILS at Gatwick when the time comes. Okay, looking at the flight mode annunciator on the first officer's primary flight display, you can see the FMA changes, and the system has adopted FMA speed and LNAV and VNAV. So let's try climbing to 6,000 feet using vertical speed. You can see I've pre-selected vertical speed mode, and I'm dialing in plus 1,000 feet a minute to take us up the last 1,000 feet to cruising altitude. Again, watching the flight mode annunciator on the first officer's PFD to make sure the aircraft responds appropriately to mode control panel inputs. So I've selected the Vorlock display on the first officer's primary flight display, on the first officer's nav display. That's for the ILS. Setting the inbound course for 08 right at Gatwick at 079. Again, my lack of familiarity with the 737-900. I'm going to be missing a few switch selections for setting this up, but hopefully we'll do well enough to get the aircraft on the ILS and do an auto land. Leveling now at 6,000 feet, or flight level 60, I should say, and you can see the mode changes on the mode control panel in the simulator reflected on the hardware mode control panel. So you can see that the flight mode annunciators indicated altitude hold. That hasn't actually been reflected. As you can see, the altitude hold button on the mode control panels is not lit. Not sure if that's a feature of the real aeroplane or whether it's just something missing from the simulator. I think what we'll do at this point is skip forward on the approach. So skip forward a bit. Now we're on a closing heading for the ILS for runway 08 at Gatwick. And you can see on the first officer's nav display that we're closing with the ILS centerline. I've selected approach mode, and I've selected the gear down. You can see we're at flat 5, and we normally go to flat 15 with gear selection. Okay, so now we have the necessary modes established on the ILS. I'm going to engage the second autopilot. That will give us the autoline capability. I think you can do it with one autopilot, but again, my knowledge of the 737 is rather rusty. So at the moment we're using FMA speed, but now I've switched to selected speed. That's the glide slope. You see Gatwick coming into view ahead of us. And I'm now going to go to flap 40, which, if I remember, is the only certificated flap setting for Autoland. Certainly wasn't the 737-300 that I flew. Quite close to the flight limiting speed here. I've forgotten to reset the speed back to something more reasonable for the approach. Okay, speed's coming back now. And there we go, flap 40. That's the landing configuration established. You see I've forgotten to set the auto brake to something appropriate. I remember that on fairly short final. Clearly, if you're operating the real aircraft, you'd have checklists to make sure this was all done. So that really is it. We're all established for the Autoland. So let's skip forward now and come down towards decision height. So here we are, a lot closer to the threshold. We'll be watching the flight mode annunciator to make sure the aircraft does what it's supposed to. But I won't be landing this manually. I don't really trust myself at the moment to land the 737 in this sim. And it doesn't look like the Autoland's doing a particularly good job either, as we're lined up more on the left-hand side of the runway than the centre line. However, we'll leave it to do its thing, see how it gets on. So there's the flare. Idle throttles for touchdown. Touchdown. Looks like we're veering off the left-hand side, so I'm going to end it there so we can avoid any tears. So there we have it. A review of Winwing's Boeing 737NG control and display unit and mode control panel. I do hope you've enjoyed that, and I hope you found it useful as well. I look forward to seeing you again sometime in the near future. Thank you.